Hello, my name is Nadine and welcome to Hop Along Studio. Today I wanted to show you how you can use your Brusho powders with a variety of gels and pastes. And we're going to be using stencils, collage paper. We're going to make this very much a mixed media project. But I'm going to show you how Brushos can work on a variety of surfaces and on a variety of textures. So the first thing we want to do is choose a focal image for our project. In this case, I am choosing one of the faces from the Dina Wakley Collage Paper collection. And that's just going to go onto my art journal page. But I don't want the harsh lines along the edges. So what I'm going to do is use a fine paintbrush and I'm going to add water along the edges. And this collage tissue paper doesn't tear quite as well as regular tissue paper does. But I'm going to try to, again, just tear this and soften the line a bit, just so it works a little bit better in our project. So I do find those top lines are really hard because they end up kind of sticking out on your project. I do find the collage paper, I don't know what exactly it's made out of. I don't think it's regular tissue paper because usually regular tissue paper would tear quite well with this. It almost feels like a combination between some sort of parchment paper and tissue paper. I'm just going to do what I can to tear it, and I find that it generally tears better in one direction over another. Like I find it usually tears better in this direction because of the way the paper is made over the other direction. So I'm just going to quickly go around and just tear this off. If this is all new to you, check out some of my tissue paper videos. I go into a lot of detail about how to tear, how to color, and how to use tissue papers in your projects. So once you kind of turn on the edges to soften it, the next thing you want to do is just add some matte medium and adhere this to your page. And I'm starting at the bottom and I'm working my way up. This is an easy way to work in your journal in a way that you're going to try to not have too much of a wrinkled look to this girl once we add her to the page. By adding that matte medium in layers like this is a really great way of adhering it and getting some really good results. And you might notice that the craft paper is sucking up quite a bit of the medium. And if you run into that and that is something you don't like, you could always add a layer of clear gesso before you start to prevent that. But in this case, I don't mind the fact that it is just sucking up a bit of the medium. I just need to add a little bit more as I work along. I'm getting more wrinkles today than I usually do in this, so I'm just going to work with it. And it's okay if there's wrinkles in places, it just adds a little bit more texture. But when you do work in areas, it does give you generally a smoother result in getting your tissue paper or your collage paper down on the page. And I don't usually use faces in a lot of my art journaling. Faces are not really my focus with art journaling. I love using nature, birds, trees, plants. But in this case, I really had some thoughts that I really wanted to share. And I thought the girl was the perfect imagery for that page. And I find that the Dina Wakley tissue paper is a little bit tougher than regular tissue paper, so you can work over it quite a bit more than you would with a normal tissue paper, just because of the materials it's made out of. You might notice that certain areas are more white or less white, and that's just be a byproduct of this particular type of collage paper. I noticed that, but I don't mind it because I kind of like it that she's not just all one consistency, that there's a little bit of variation in the image itself. In this corner here, since it kind of went over, I want to just take my knife and run my knife just along the edge here, and I'm just tearing that off. And since that picked up a bit, I'm just going to add another little layer of matte medium, make sure that is staying down really well. And just make sure this is fully dry before you move on to the next step. In this case, I'll be using my heat tool just to dry it quickly and we'll move on. So with this page, I'm adding quite a few mediums before I even look at adding brushos onto the page. And so in this case, I'm going to start by using some stencils and I'm going to be using a variety of mediums. So I'm going to start by adding some fiber paste. And what I love about fiber paste is because it is made of a paper product, it takes the brushos very, very well. And so I'm going to add a little bit of fiber paste with this chevron shape along the bottom. I'm just going to make it look like her clothing has a little bit of texture to it. And I also want to kind of have her hair not just stay as hair, so I'm just going to add the bubbles with her hair and we're going to see how this looks. And the fiber paste is one of my favorite pastes for art journaling. I love just the things you can do with it, and it just has a really nice texture. It's easy to spread and it dries fairly quickly. In this case, I actually went a little bit thin. You can put it on really thin to let some of the craft paper come through, or you can add it on a little bit thicker so that those bubbles are basically completely opaque. And I wanted to add in some glass bead gel as well. Glass bead gel, if you've been following me for a while, you will know it's one of my absolute favorite gels to use on an art journal page. And I'm using a lot more textures than I generally would in an art journal page. And part of that is I just want to show you a lot of different ways the pastes and gels can be added onto your project. And the pastes and gels usually work a little bit better with an open stencil. You can let it overlap the image a bit, unlike the paste, because the paste will dry opaque. I want to make sure that we do leave the girl without a lot of texture on her, just because I do want to make sure that she kind of sticks out in this piece. And I'm trying to get these beads a little bit on the thinner side, just so that they dry in a timely manner. And I'm going to add just one more paste, and that's going to be a light molding paste. So this far we've done fiber paste, we've done glass bead gel, and we're going to use light molding paste. And I really like this light molding paste on my projects. It seems to take the brushes really, really well. And it's very easy to work with. It goes on extremely smooth. And I'm actually going to mix it a little bit with the glass bead gel and with the fiber paste. I don't really like this smudgy area, so I'm going to go back in and just run my knife in. Once I lined that back up. And that gives it a slightly different texture. Again, it's a little less clear where you can see the craft underneath, but it'll work really well for what we're doing for this project. So you want to make sure this dries fully, which means that the gels will be completely clear when they fully dry, and the paste will be quite hard. So we're going to set this aside, and then I'll come back once it's fully dry and we can start adding our brushos. So now that the gels and the mediums are dry, we're going to go ahead and add our brushos to our surface. So you can do this two ways. You can start by just spritzing it lightly, and then adding brushos. You can add brushos and then spritz lightly. It depends on how much water or how little water you want to have on the page. I like spritzing a little bit because it kind of keeps the powders in place. And I'm adding some rose red and some purple. And I just want to make it look like her shirt is a different color from everything else. And I have a few different sprayers I'll be using. I have a Distress sprayer, a Ranger Mister, and one that also came with my brushos. And one thing you can do is if you're finding stuff is pulling in the direction you don't want, you can always tilt your page slightly, let it run down, and just have a paper towel here just to pull up any excess that you don't want. And if you don't want anything on her neck, just take your paper towel and just wipe a little bit, and that will kind of keep the color where you would prefer it to be on your page. And so I think I want her to be a little bit blonde-ish, so I'm adding some lemon and some yellow ochre, and we'll see kind of how that looks. This isn't meant to be realistic or anything. It's just kind of fun to try to kind of think about what you want in certain areas and try to stick just to a few colors. I'm going to put a little bit along here because, again, some of the hair is falling down the side here. And I like that to frame her face a little bit. I'm just going to add a mister and just spritz a bit more. And I don't really want a lot on her. I kind of want this to be a contrast to all the brushos and all that color. So I'm just using my paper towel just to wipe it up. And because we've used matte medium, it's going to resist the brushos, and then it will dry on the surface. But while it's still wet, you can add color to certain areas and leave color off of other areas. And she has a bit of hair here, so I'm just going to add a little bit more there. And just spritz a little bit more in that. And so you can see that I'm not removing all of the color from the craft. I could go quite dark with this, or I can go quite light. It kind of depends on the direction you prefer to go. I'm going to add some sea green, some turquoise. And I actually just thought maybe I will make her raspberry blonde. We'll add a little bit of red amongst her hair and see how that looks. Right, or strawberry blonde maybe it is. I am going to make her reddish blonde. More just because I'm enjoying the colors that I'm using. And so you can see the brush strokes are amazing because they just completely add color to the page. And this does look bright, but it is going to soak in. It's going to get a little bit more muted. And I just want to add a little bit of gray back here as well, just to see what that looks like. And I also have a little bit of white here that I'm going to add in some places, especially on the gels. I want to see kind of what that gives a look of and how that brightens or changes the background a little bit. And if you feel you've gotten a little too dark in places, you can always dab on the surface. For example, if you want some of these areas of the gel to still be white, you can always take some of the color off. I prefer it with the color, but you can add a little bit more contrast that way. So what's really cool about this is because we're using the matte medium on her, it gives us the ability to wipe up any color that we don't want. It allows us to blot off. All of these different mediums and all these different colors give us some options. Because again, we have the gel medium that has some color on top, but a lot of it's seeping in behind. And so some of that shimmer will show up. You have the white areas from the paste that is absorbing some of the color, but other color is just basically seeping in around it. So there's a lot of different layers and textures you're now getting just from these brushes. And as brushes can also be used as a watercolor medium, I'm going to take a little tiny bit of the turquoise and put it on my surface here, just a few little crumbs. I'm taking a watercolor paintbrush, and that's going to make me a beautiful blue color and a very intense blue color. And so I want her pretty much as she is, but I would like to add a little bit of color to her eyes. I want to give her just very vibrant blue eyes. And I'm going to add just a little bit of vermilion to her lips. Touch of the yellow ochre to her hairline, because I do want to try to have it that her hair doesn't end in a weird spot, which it kind of is right now. So we're just going to add in a little bit of color along here, just to follow that line a little more strongly. I'll just add a tiny bit of lemon as well, because I do want to try to keep with that same color mix. Brighten that up a little bit. I'm trying not to go too crazy just in this, because I really like where this is going, but I just do want to control it a little bit, just so I can get a little bit more of a consistent look and result from this. So basically I've let her dry. You can see the color's really great. I have some spots here where the white paste is showing through. So even though we're adding the deep brushes, the craft paper, because of the hue of it, it makes things darker, and then this allows there to be a little bit more contrast. So you could leave it here. You could also add some things to add a little bit of shimmer. I have a few of these waxes. I have this one that has a little bit more shimmer in it. And if I add a little bit to my surface, it can add some very subtle shimmer to my page. It depends if you really like shimmery or not, because it does catch the high areas. It's a very subtle look, but it's one thing you can do to maybe add a little bit of shimmer. The other thing you can do is do something like add a little bit of iridescent bronze. And if I just add a little bit onto my mat, water it down with a paintbrush and a little bit of water, you could add that either on top or around some of the gel areas. So because the brushes are a watercolor pigment, they will re-wet and then will mix with the color that you're adding on top. I don't really feel like this needs a lot, but I want to let you know that there are some options. So if you're not really happy with this, or you want to try to add a little bit more shimmer or color, you could even use a little bit of wax on your finger. The fiber paste is quite rough. I could just add a little bit in there, and it'll just catch all the high points. So last thing I want to do is just add my thoughts. And I type my thoughts out with my manual typewriter and just cut them out. My words are feelings are just feelings, but what we do with them is important. I'm just going to add these with glitter glue on the page, and I'll explain a little bit about why I chose these words. So I recently had an epiphany regarding my feelings. So I've been thinking about, how do I relate to my feelings? How do I judge them? Do I consider them good or bad? Do I put my identity attached to my feelings? I've been asking myself a lot of these questions lately, mostly because I realized how much I judge my feelings. Well, if I'm having joy and happiness, well then I'm having good feelings and I'm a good person. If I'm angry or I'm feeling judgmental or I'm feeling anxiety, well those are bad feelings and that makes me bad. And I've realized just how toxic that can be to my own mental health and my own mental well-being. I've come to the realization that feelings are just feelings. They come to us as a trigger from our environment, from our responses around us. We feel something for a reason. And I'm learning to embrace my feelings. They tell me something. They tell me, am I doing okay? Is there something in this environment that isn't really healthy for me? Am I struggling in this environment? And that whole conversation with myself has helped me look at myself with a lot more self-compassion and to embrace my feelings instead of seeing them as an enemy. I think we should understand our feelings, understand where they're coming from, what the trigger is, what's causing us to feel that way. But I don't think we necessarily always need to share our feelings right away. And sometimes I can be shooting from the hip a little bit and that ends up causing us or others pain. There's some times where people have been very aggressive with me and it's been very hurtful, and I've realized it's important that we show emotional intelligence even when we're angry or sad or whatever those feelings are. I really think about the words, say it nice. And it's really resonated with me that if I'm going to share my feelings, say it nice. Otherwise, take a step away, evaluate those feelings, figure out what I'm feeling, and then come back to the situation and have a conversation. And I don't think we need to react immediately for our feelings. We don't need to justify ourselves. We don't need to put ourselves out there with our feelings when we're not too sure why these feelings are coming or what they mean. Sometimes the best thing to do is remove ourselves from the situation so we have time to contemplate, to think, and to understand what we're feeling and come back in a healthier way. I think it's really important that we learn to say things nice. And that means having good boundaries, because having good boundaries, we respect ourselves, we respect others, and we learn how to say things kindly. That's why I wanted to use this thought. Feelings are just feelings, but what I do with them is important. This for me is that place where I'm learning to show self-compassion to myself while still caring and showing love for others. And so I thought this one was a really important page to do, and I thought it was a great way of showing you how to use Brushos, how to mix it with mediums, and how to mix it with tissue papers, and create these fun resists and try some different things on a craft background, which is a different medium than I usually use, and kind of pull a bunch of different things together. So I hope you've enjoyed this video on how to use Brushos with your mediums. There's so many mediums we could have tested and so many different surfaces we could have tried this technique on. So play with it. I would love to hear what you come up with, and please leave a comment below about what you've discovered about this, or if you have any questions about this medium. And if you've enjoyed this video, if you could like it, subscribe, and hit that notification button so you don't miss out on any future videos. I've also included the full supply list below, and those include affiliate links, and that's just another way that you can support this channel and allow me to bring you videos every week. And if you're interested in another video about Brushos, click here. This is another project that I've done that includes some techniques on how to use Brushos in your creative projects. I hope you have a really great week, that you take some time for some personal self-care, and I will see you next time.